Hey everybody, welcome to episode 5 of UFO News. I am your host, Jesse Hobbs. UFO News is available on the Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 FM on the New Orleans dial, and it is also available on Paltalk, Ustream, and for download under the archives on the paranormalradionetwork.org site. It's also available on iTunes if you go under the Paranormal Radio Network and put it under podcasts on iTunes. You can download all the programs that are on the network. In today's episode, we will discuss a follow-up on the Brazilian UFO disclosure, a possible alien skeleton also in Brazil, a rebuttal of this Scorso incident, a Dutch UFO sighting, an Iranian UFO during a test of one of their controversial missile programs, and much, much more. I'd just like to start off with a few things. As most of you know, our program has been extended to a full hour per a request that I put into Mr. Joe Montaldo, and I thank him for the opportunity to go to a full hour. I asked for the additional half hour primarily due to the influx of UFO stories in the news currently. Last week was what I would call a slow news week, but I still managed to find over 14 stories worth mentioning. Also, I apologize for the abrupt ending that ended last week's program. It seems that my internet connection, which powers my phone line also, seemed to crash around the same time that the show ended. Also, I would like to mention that the format of this show will basically be what some would call a floating format, depending on availability of news stories. When I find enough newsworthy stories, I will discuss only the news. But when there are less stories, the format may be changed to half news and half featured stories, which may constitute an old famous sighting, an interview with an eyewitness, or a current sighting that is extremely prominent in the news, in the UFO News Network. And it would also have to have a large amount of available information so I could research the subject for a weekly program. I've had a surprising number of people contact me for interviews on the program, but I would also like to stay true to our show's format, or our philosophy, if you may. This is first and foremost a current UFO alternative news site that will deal primarily with current UFO sightings around the globe. I started this program because I noticed that there was an extreme lack of programs like ourselves, like we are now. There are many other programs available on our network that include interviews with guests, personal commentary, and discussion of past UFO sightings. But I approached Joe with the idea of a program like ours because I felt it was unique and that it would complement the rest of the lineup very well. Kind of like the analogy of a baseball team lineup. There's a leadoff hitter, there's contact hitters, and so on and so forth. I'm not quite sure where we fall into the lineup, but I hope it's somewhere in the middle. So I'd like to make that promise to you folks that this will first and foremost be a UFO news program that will mostly deal with UFO sightings. I also hope that by someone like myself, a fairly young person as far as the ages of others in this field go, that I would inspire young people like myself to get involved in ufology rather than just read books and listen to podcasts as I did for many years until I decided to contribute myself. Unfortunately, the field of ufology, as abstract as it may be, lacks younger people, and I hear it more and more in the more podcasts and the broadcasts that I listen to. And it's unfortunate because young people have something that older people do not have. They have a lack of just a drive in them that eventually life just beats out of you when you reach your late 30s and 40s and 50s. So it would be nice if someone, John Greenwald, who does Black Vault, is one of the younger people in the field. I extremely admire his work, and he is very well spoken and extremely credible. But besides him, I cannot think of someone on the top of my head, considered in my age group to be doing something. And I am a complete amateur. I've just read a lot of books, and this is my hobby that I've taken to on the air, and I was just very fortunate to have someone that would let me continue what I'm doing on the air. So, I caught a break, but I'll tell you that it's been a great experience for however long it lasts, and I love it, and I recommend it to anyone else who's interested in the field. Also, one more thing I'd just like to say, I hope that you folks, you listeners, would please forward any relevant news stories in your local news or some stories you may come across as you surf the internet. This show is primarily relies on listener participation, which includes suggestions of show ideas and stories to be considered for airing on the program. Our email address is UFO_news247@yahoo.com. Again, that's UFO_news247@yahoo.com. And please send me anything you find relevant, a local news story you might find in your newspaper. Maybe you were surfing the internet looking for stuff and you came across a news story you haven't heard lately. Please just send it to me, and I'll take careful consideration into it. And if I do air your story, I will give you a credit. I will let you know that you sent it to me, and I would very much appreciate that. One more kind of funny anecdotal thing that I'd like to tell you guys about. Since I started this program, I've been watching the skies more often than I used to. Not only because of the show, but also because I live in what some people would consider a UFO hotbed, which is Bucks County, Pennsylvania. So I travel with a set of binoculars in my car and, when possible, a digital camera. So the other day, I was traveling to the new local Walmart, the super duper Walmart in our neighborhood, for a present for my son. My son turned 4 years old Tuesday. And on the way, I noticed that the sky was extremely cloudy, but there was a huge area behind the clouds where a beam of light just lit up the sky. So I chased it down all the way to the store, stopping along the way, pulling over, looking at it with the binoculars, viewing the light in the sky. It was very prominent and very bright in the sky. So I finally found it, and I looked at it crystal clear, and guess what I saw? It was the beautiful October harvest moon, and it was a huge pie in the sky. It was just absolutely beautiful. I was so excited I lost my frame of reference and my frame of time, and I forgot that the moon was even out there. So at least it's the thought that counts, and that's all I basically have to say. That I was just so pumped up on seeing something in the sky that it just totally excited me. And the moon was beautiful. Don't get me wrong; it was absolutely beautiful. But it would have been nice to see something, but unfortunately, I didn't. So enough with all that. Let's go straight to the news. Our first story comes to us from The Sun. It is a British publication, and it is titled UFO Tracks Iranian Missiles. The article is written by Mr. Vince Sudin, and it was published on the 6th of October, 2009. A UFO streaks through the sky in this astonishing video of the Iranians test firing a controversial missile. And I will tell you ahead of time that the video attributed to this story was posted on Fox News. The story reads as follows: The mystery object zoomed unseen through Iranian airspace before splitting a cloud in two as the film focused in on the soaring rocket. A UFO expert today described the unknown craft, which appears to be tracking the weapon, as phenomenal. Iran launched 2 short-range missiles last Saturday, angering the West and Israel. A U.S. report on Fox News revealed that the UFO in footage of the second launch. It also stated that the video shows the Shahab-3 rocket soaring into the sky. But after 38 seconds, a nearby cloud is mysteriously torn in two by the flying object traveling at speeds. And I will add that I did see this video. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but they do show a very, not an extremely cloudy sky. I would say a flat, scarcely cloudy sky, but there is a split within the clouds. Nick Pope, a respected former UFO analyst for the Ministry of Defense of Great Britain, examined the remarkable footage. He hinted that whatever ripped through the cloud was not man-made. He said one theory is that it's a secret American drone, and any time there is a prototype aircraft and drones being operated, that wouldn't be shown in public for years. Stealth aircraft flew for many years before the existence was acknowledged. But the speed and acceleration seems phenomenal. I'm not convinced we've got anything capable of such maneuvers. And like I said, the article was attributed to the Sun. There are many comments attributed to it, pros and cons. I'm not exactly sure where I fall in line with that, but I'm sorry, folks. I'm having some computer problem trying to bring up the POW Talk session. I apologize for that. Okay, our next story comes to us from a site called newsvoa.com, and it is titled Massive New Ring Detected Around Saturn. This article was published by the staff on VOA News, and it was posted on the 7th of October, 2009, and it reads as follows. A 3-member team of U.S. astronomers say they have discovered a giant new ring around the planet Saturn. A thin sheet of ice and dust particles extending about 12 million kilometers out from the planet's surface has been detected by the U.S.-built Spitzer Space Telescope. Officials with NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory says that the ring is so big it would hold the equivalent of 1 billion Earths. So I'm assuming that's quite big. The trio of astronomers, led by Ann Verserber of the University of Virginia, believes the ring was formed by debris from the impact of comets striking Phobos, a moon of Saturn that orbits within the rings. The astronomers believe the ring also solves the mystery behind another of Saturn's moons, Iapetus, which has a light and dark side. They say the dark side of Iapetus is caused by dust particles from the ring striking the surface. The Spitzer telescope, launched in 2003, is currently 107 million kilometers from Earth in orbit around the Sun. So I thought that was a quite interesting story. Our next story comes to us from none other than CNN.com. And I actually saw this story while I was watching CNN, and it scrolled along the bottom of the screen. So I went on the computer and looked it up, and here we go. It was posted, I believe the story was posted on the 7th of October, 2009. It is written by Amani Basu, and it reads as follows. Stone circle suggests Stonehenge part of burial complex. Stonehenge, an enigma to visitors and scientists alike for so many years, became less of a mystery after a discovery announced to the world this week. Archaeologists that have unearthed a new circle near Stonehenge that leans credence to the theory that the famous prehistoric monument in Britain was part of a funeral complex. University of Bristol archaeologist Joshua Pollard described the new find as incredible because it establishes Stonehenge as part of a larger ceremonial complex linked to the nearby River Avon. None of us could have predicted there was another stone circle so close by, says Pollard, co-director of the excavation project that began in 2004. This, he said, changed the perception of the popular tourist destination 90 miles west of London. The new find, dubbed Blue Stonehenge, after the color of the 25 Welsh stones of which it was composed, sits along the Avon, a mile away from its famous sister circle. And the story basically goes on just to state that not many people know that Stonehenge was Britain's largest burial ground, that initially that's what Stonehenge was for. It was a burial ground. People have debated the purpose of Stonehenge for decades. Archaeologists began the latest excavation with hope of tracking the course of the avenue that Stonehenge led. They had no idea they would stumble across this second circle, so they never really had the purpose in mind of finding a second circle. They just seemed to have stumbled upon it. It's very interesting. If you want to go on CNN's website and type in stone circle, That's the way that I brought the story up. So it was a very interesting story, as old as Stonehenge is, and they're still finding more new relevant information out of it. I thought that was pretty interesting, at least for me. So our next story comes to us from an old faithful, oldnewsweb.com. It is written by Michael Cohen, and the story is titled, Dutch UFO Sightings Get Media Attention with Video. A UFO sighting, along with accompanying footage that took place in the Netherlands, is making headlines in that country. Steve Vanderverde could not believe his eyes when his girlfriend pointed a strange point in the sky to him. The 32-year-old Steve took out his camera and started filming the UFO. It just basically says the footage below was taken last night, from Steve's living room in the Dutch town of Devolag. It was a red object moving with great speed in the vicinity of our apartment. His girlfriend commented that she noticed the object around 11:30 local time. The UFO was diamond-shaped, not disc-shaped, continued Steve. I really doubt it was a Chinese lantern or a weather balloon, he concluded. And you know how many sightings we get where people attribute sightings to either weather balloons or mostly Chinese lanterns. So that was, to me, quite satisfying to hear that. And if you would go on YouTube and type in the search words UFO spotted Delkov, DELFGAUW 1 October 2009, you can actually view the video that was posted. And I must say that the video, I believe the video lasts about maybe 2.5 minutes, but it is quite compelling. And the shape is not a conventional saucer or one of the objects that we're used to seeing in the States, a triangle. It basically is a diamond, three-dimensional shape in the sky. So I thought that was quite interesting, that sighting. Our next story is coming to us straight from Brazil, and it is titled The Brazilian Alien Follow-Up from Episode 4. I spoke about this last episode, that Brazil was finally releasing its X-Files from all of its UFO sightings dating back to the late 50s, and this is the follow-up story that I came across. The latest disclosure comprises of 220,000 new pages of formerly secret UFO documents that were given to the UFO Committee and also sent to the Brazilian National Archives. In late July, hundreds of papers from the Brazilian Air Force's official system for the investigation of unidentified aerial phenomenon, also known as Sioania, SIOANI, have demonstrated how the nation's military authorities dealt with UFO in the 60s and 70s. Considering that this organization wasn't a top-secret agency and that even civilian researchers took part in the procedure, the structure and functionality of which proves that Brazil is the first country in the world to officially go public admitting the reality of UFOs and the first to investigate it openly. The article basically goes on just to bring up famous sightings that were in Brazil. It states points of high hysteria in the 60s and 70s south of the border in South America. It also says that as a result of this invasion of UFOs, the Air Force Minister, Brigadier Octavio Morano Lima, went public about it the other morning on national TV network. And if anyone has this video, please send it to me. I've researched it. It's extremely hard to find. I do not speak Spanish as well as I probably should. It says that upon him declaring all facts openly, the pilots who took part in the pursuit of a UFO in the 1960s, in the early 1960s, and their commanders also spoke freely about the pursuits, which occurred over several hours. The article also goes on stating that we've had several other disclosures since 2007, the Freedom of Information Act in America, and basically just the Brazilian. And we also know that France has released documentations, and so have many other nations in the country besides ourselves. So that's the end of that story. Our next story is titled Brazilians May Be in Possession of an Alien Skeleton. And this story came to us from the official UFO.com.br website. which is a pretty big website in Brazil, and it's a big website everywhere else. It's very easy to pull information from, and I search there pretty much on a weekly basis. The controversial skeleton, whose strange characteristics have led researchers and ufologists to believe that it is non-terrestrial origin. The population of Uberaba, the mining town of 350 inhabitants, was very apprehensive because a local museum exhibit, among thousands of other parts, the skeleton of a supposed extraterrestrial being. This is the Natural History Museum Extavia Wilson, a private institution that also houses the Astronomical Society of Uberaba. It contains an archive of animal mummies and stones of all kinds. With the two entities together, aim to bring culture and science to the students from schools in the cities. The museum belongs to the family of Escovitch, of Russian descent, and their ancestors traveled the world with a circus at the end of the 19th century, which is quite interesting. These are not native Brazilians; these are Russians that were circus people and that traveled the world, and eventually in the 1950s and 60s they settled into Brazil. They passed through, won, or finished with parts such as mummies and stones, animal skeletons, fossils, and etc. The Extavanius went to Uberaba in 1956, and in 1997 founded the museum, said previously. In August of 2004, two directors of the institution, the Wellington lawyer and Professor Estanovich, Charlemagne Estianovich, searches, author, and researches Jose Ecuador Conhisor Maya, saying there was a very different number on the site, and asked that we should know it. It was a strange skeleton that had been embalmed and has been with the family for 96 years. The directors reported that the skeleton caused the attention of the community and therefore decided to present it to the UFO magazine, assuming that it is a skeleton of extraterrestrial being. So they found this skeleton that they've been carrying around for years and years and years, and someone got the bright idea of possibly contacting UFO magazine because it may be an extraterrestrial being. We attended and examined in detail the object, which has the identification number 33-007, along with Mr. Neto, another member of the family. Estianovich Neto is a scholar, restaurateur, sizer, and inside knowledge of the mummification process. Some doctors we contacted said little about this, basically saying that the skeleton does not seem to be a human, due to their deficiencies, such as a very large head, small body, etc. This fact is also strange for the president of the Museum of Natural History, Estianovich Wilson, as the diameter of the human skeleton, which has an incredible 97 centimeters. Moreover, the bones appear to have belonged to a hermaphrodite with 6 toes, and today is semi-mummificated. The article basically just goes on to state that the people that own a museum that are in possession of this mummy believe that it is an alien, and there are some skeptics. I believe there's one that states that it possibly is a mummified bird that may not be in existence at this point. So, if anyone is interested, go onto the website I believe it is ufo.com.br, and the UFO magazine. It's stated under that. That's where the article came from. So, but I believe I mostly post the story because we just spoke about a Brazilian disclosure case, and I just happened to fumble upon a possible skeleton of a alien or a UFO, so I thought that was a pretty interesting story. And our next story is titled, Mysterious Lights in the Sky Baffle Residents. This story was posted October 6, 2009 by a Emily Woodruff from South Wales, United Kingdom. The story reads as follows. Reports of a bright white light in the sky above Penarth, just moments after a power cut, have sparked a UFO mystery. The appearance of the glowing disk of light came after homeowners were plunged into darkness as a result of an underground cable fault, which also set house alarms off and their cars' alarms blaring. Experts have said that the flying glow may have been anything from meteorites to fireballs to satellites or laser beams. Angela Jenkins, at Canam Avenue of Canam Avenue, said she was leaving the Spar store on Brock Hill Way when the streets became dark. The 61-year-old grandmother said it was between 8 and 8:30 when the lights just went out everywhere. I went into the house to get a torch and came back out to have a look to see if anyone else's lights were out as well. That's when I saw this great big light retreating from around the clouds. It moved around heading towards the cliff walk towards the sea. I saw it 3 times. My neighbor next door, she's a carer, which I'm assuming is a nurse, saw it too when she came out, twice in fact. I'm glad someone else saw it. I thought I was going mad. The retired teacher said she had no idea what the light could have been. It was very strange, she said. It definitely wasn't a plane. Everything was silent. There was no noise at all. Many of the residents in the street stayed in their homes at the time of Friday's evening's 20-minute power cut, or were out of the area and didn't witness the strange lights. A suggestion it could have been caused by a neighbor's torch as they stumbled to their garage in the darkness was dismissed by Miss Jenkins, who said the light was high in the sky and behind the clouds. That view was shared by a former Ministry of Defense official turned UFO specialist, Nick Pope again. Most torches have a particularly impressive range, so to see something in the sky would need something more like a searchlight. As to what it was, I do not know, Mr. Pope states. One possibility is meteorites or fireballs. It could also have been an aircraft lights, as whether or not you hear their noise depends on how far away you are or the weather. Sometimes nightclubs shine powerful lasers in the sky, publicity stunt as if there was a power cut, any light from something that would have been much more visible and spectacular. He also adds that most UFO sightings can be explained as misidentification, but around 5% are genuine mysteries and remain unexplained. And I really believe in that quote. I can't say it again. He added that most UFO sightings can be explained as misidentification, but around 5% are genuine mysteries and remain unexplained. And I totally believe that statement. 5% of hundreds of thousands of sightings is a very significant amount. So any United Kingdom is having an influx of sightings lately, and I must say that they become more and more compelling with the witnesses and the people that see them. Our story is titled Michigan Witness Catches Disc-Shaped UFO on Camera. This article comes to us from theexaminer.com. It's written by Mr. Roger Marsh, and the story reads as follows. The UFO traffic report from Monday, October 5th, 2009, includes 7 selected sightings over 5 states. According to witnesses' statements filed in the past 72 hours through MUFON, please keep in mind that most UFO reports can be explained. This is their disclaimer that MUFON puts out. And I'll go straight to the case studies. The first one is from October 4th of 2009. 2 distinct objects, 1 rectangular, 1 disc. MUFON case number 19811. A Michigan witness watched 2 unidentified objects in the night sky over Round Lake. The first was described as a bright, tall, box-shaped object. It moved across the sky with 3 sets of multicolored blinking lights, made a sharp right turn, and turned its lights off. The second object was described as a bright white disc-shaped object that had a round center. The witness was able to snap 1 photo with its cell phone and of the second object and wants to know if anyone else saw it. The next case sighting was on the 2nd of October, 2 days before this sighting, and it is stated as 5 triangular-shaped UFOs moving as though they were scanning the ground. The UFO case sighting number is 19783. and the story is basically just that a triangular-shaped UFO went over the mountains between Glen Haven and Box Prairie. One of the witnesses saw 7 objects, and the second saw 4. I tried to get a pattern on this sighting, but I was unable to do that. Unfortunately, the way that they listed it, the most recent sighting was the first one I read from the 4th of October, and the other ones basically go down chronologically from the 2nd of October to the 29th. So unfortunately, this article was not too helpful, but that was a very interesting sighting, at least the first one. Our next story comes to us from Bakewell Today, which is powered by the Matlock Mercury, which is a publication that is posted in Great Britain, and it is titled "No Explanation for Sighting of UFO." This article was posted on the 8th of October 2009 by the staff, and it reads as follows. A mysterious UFO has once again been spotted in Dallas. Stephen Green of the Cavendish area of Matlock contacted the Mercury after spotting a light in the sky which looked like a helicopter on fire. That's interesting. He said whatever it was orange colored with flickering lights around the edges. There was no noise at all from whatever it was, and it had no fixed or flashing navigation lights. As it was dark, I could not make out the shape, but it was orange, and the edges maintained their flickering feature throughout the sighting, which probably lasted from 2 to 3 minutes in total. The sighting was on September 25th, Friday, around 9 p.m. Mr. Green said his 2 daughters and their friend also saw it. He added, "My youngest daughter thinks it was a lantern, but the others disagree. However, they cannot come up with an answer. I have never seen anything like this before and find it frustrating that I cannot come up with a rational explanation for what we saw." That sounds extremely reasonable. This sounds like a man that saw something. He is a man of science. He is someone that has rationalized things his entire life, and he's come across something that he cannot rationalize. So I can totally empathize with this situation. The height and speed characteristics were those of a helicopter, but there was no noise whatsoever and no aircraft navigational lights. The orange glow and the flickering propriety to its form just add to my questions about the sighting. And the article goes to state, have you seen the sighting? Please post a comment, blah, blah, blah. So that was a quite interesting story. Our next story comes to us straight from Roswell, New Mexico. And it comes to us from the Denver Phenom Research Examiner, written by Larry Rimbert via Examiner.com, and it is titled Roswell UFO Museum to Close. No, let's build. In a recent telephone interview with architectural firm Ahern Schaffner, Kevin Schaffner said he was trying to avoid the look of a spaceship in the new design of the building. Apparently there's some construction going on at the UFO Museum in Roswell, and he discusses the types of archaeological designs that he's been approached with. Kevin got the idea to help with the design after seeing a television program on the museum's plans to expand. I guess something good does come out of watching television, apparently. He describes the design as more of an alien object, such as a celestial navigational chart, rather than an alien spaceship. The article really, I'm not going to read the entire thing. It basically goes on to say that the UFO website is basically stating that the design should be of a found alien object of unknown origin, which has been placed in a researcher's drawer. They're just basically trying to come up with cute, catchy ideas of what to make. One of the ideas is a crash saucer that crashed into the building, which I think personally is a little tacky, but it would probably be a pretty amazing architectural task to take that under and to make that happen. One of the figures they came across was at final cost, it would cost over $25 million. The construction would take place in 2 phases. Groundbreaking on the first phase should take place no sooner or later than October 2010. But there was other people on the website stating that it should be 30,000 square foot versus 35,000 square foot. And, of course, the common bickering whenever you come across the field of ufology, whether it is building or speaking of cases or coming to consensus, takes place. So it is very unfortunate. I personally, this is my point of view, I think Roswell is extremely and totally commercial. I don't give much of it any value. I don't even really hear about the story anymore of Roswell, not only for the fact that it happened so long ago, but secondarily because there's no evidence that it ever came out of, whether it happened or it did not occur. And third of all, to be honest with you, the entire convention, everything is just a circus anymore. It's a freak show. So I personally have no objections either way or not, if it continues or not. So good luck with your construction. Our next story comes to us from the NASA.gov website, directly from NASA, and it's titled NASA Set to Dive Bomb Moon, which many of you might have known already. This article was written by Tariq Malik, and it was posted on the 8th of October, 2009. A NASA spacecraft and its trusty rocket stage are drawing even closer to the moon to intentionally crash it to their doom on Friday, which already happened. Everyone is feeling very excited, said Victoria Friedland, NASA's program executive for the LCROSS, or the L-Cross mission. This is a great sense of anticipation. And the article basically goes on to say that the mission cost $79 million, and the acronym is short for Lunar Crater Observation Sensing Satellite. It basically says that what it weighs, the rocket weighed 5,216 pounds, and researchers believe that the blast will create a new crater about the size of 12 miles wide in diameter and send moon dirt soaring to heights of 6.2 miles, where it will be illuminated by the sun. So basically, however controversial or however you may feel about this is basically just to save NASA, America, and the world money, rather than ship water to the moon when we eventually build a base on the moon, which probably won't happen for another 50 to 100 years. But when it does happen, they would like to save an extreme amount of fuel, which is money, and tapping into the moon's water supply, if there is one, versus flying water to the moon. So after about 5 or 6 pages of the story, it's basically what it gets down to. It talks about other probes that are to be launched, Japan's recent Kaihayu probe, Europe's Smart 1. There are other probes that are going to be sent to the moon. So apparently there has been a extreme sudden interest in the moon after how many years off? 50 years, 40 years since you figure 69, 40 years since we've last landed on the moon. So I'd be interested in knowing what's the sudden rush to get to the moon and what stopped us from going in the first place, staying there. Our next story comes to us from the Press Association, and it is titled Hacker Loses Extradition Appeal Bid. Some of you may remember this computer hacker who had a interest in in UFOs, and he wanted to know what was going on, so he decided to hack into all types of servers and, all kinds of stuff. So he got in trouble. Computer hacker Gary McKenna has been refused permission to appeal to the Supreme Court against extradition to the U.S. on charges of breaking into the Pentagon's military networks. The High Court, which has turned down his extradition challenges, decided the case did not raise points of law of general public importance, a prerequisite of being able to pursue a case at the highest level. Blah, blah, blah. They argue that extraditing the 43-year-old who suffers from Asperger's syndrome and says his hacking was aimed at nothing more than searching for reports of UFO sightings would lead to disastrous consequences for his health, including possible psychosis and suicide. A UK trial would allow him to avoid extradition. Liberal Democrat Home Affairs spokesman Chris Hunn says if the courts cannot prevent Gary McKinnon's extradition, then Alan Johnson must. It basically says that he's running out of options. His appeals are pretty much over, and he will be returning to the U.S. I can sympathize with his reason for what he did do, but hacking into NSA, CIA, government computers is probably not a good idea. So, Mr. McKenna, good luck. I hope things work out for you. I hope your Asperger's works out, and I'd love to interview you when you get home. So please give me a call. Our next story comes to us from About.com, the UFO/alien site. It is written by Billy Booth, and it is titled UFO Weekly Sightings. I basically came across this. I was looking for some more recent sightings, and I came across a few from this website. Actually, the only one of real relevance, I feel, is the Florida sighting of September 29th, and I'll read it. It says, arriving to work on my motorcycle, I looked up to check out the weather. It was still dark outside, although the sun was just coming up and beginning to illuminate the eastern sky. I saw what I thought was a star directly overhead, yet it was moving quickly in a strange light in the west to eastern direction. I thought it might be a satellite or even the space shuttle until other small glowing objects broke away from the main object and began traveling in a northern direction at the height rate of speed, so at the fastest speed he's ever seen. The main object continued east at an extreme high altitude and had covered the distance from directly overhead to the eastern horizon in less than 10 seconds. This made me believe that it was no satellite or space shuttle because of the immense speed at which it was traveled. As it neared the eastern horizon, it briefly illuminated brightly as if it were mechanical, metallic, or reflecting the rising sun. There was no vapor trail or anything to make me believe it was just a jet or a shooting star. The smaller objects breaking away from the main object, both traveling at the same trajectory, and both traveling at extremely high rates of speed, made me believe that I was witnessing some form of experimental aircraft or spacecraft. And that is a direct quote from the witness, and the story refers you to MUFON for the case study. I do not have the case number offhand, I apologize, but if you would go to About.com, the blog UFO/aliens, I'm sure you can find it and locate it yourself. I apologize. And there's just a few other stories, one sighting in Massachusetts, Minnesota, Ohio. Not many eyewitnesses, very obscure, so I'm not going to waste my time or yours with them. But what I will do is go directly to the next story, which is titled More UFO Sightings. The story comes to us from the TV Side Advertiser, which is in Great Britain. It was filed on the 9th of October, and it reads as followed. New reports of UFOs. Mike Lewis from Athenborough reported seeing orange lights in the skies over his village just before 9 p.m. a week last Friday. The Ministry of Defense and managers at West Wales Airport have said they know of no aircraft activities in that part of the sky taking place. The article, it's a very vague article. It wasn't extremely well researched or written. I just happened to come across it. And lately, the Great Britain sightings have been extreme, and they have been prominent. They may not be the most exciting stories you will hear, but there have been many, many Great Britain sightings. Unfortunately, we are coming close to the end of our program, and I have 2 stories left. So, if I'm not have the ability to read them both, I will at least give you the stories, the titles, and the websites that I found them on. Our next story comes to us again from All News Web. Mr. Michael Cohen, and it is titled UFOs Attacks on Humans, Tragic Consequences Documented. Now, this is a very exciting looking title, and I would have entered the story with this, but before reading Mr. Cohen's disclaimer, after reading that, I decided to put this more towards the back end. It says that All News Web sees its prime mission to bring its attention of UFOs to the news reporting agencies from regions, blah, 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 blah. All News Web always has and always will put its sources' credibility. Basically what they're saying is we're not putting our name behind this story because we don't know how true it is. But if you are interested in it, the story is titled UFO Attacks on Humans, Tragic Consequences Documented. That is on allnewsweb.com and Mr. Michael Cohen. It's a quite interesting story. There are photos and videos linked to the story. I'm not going to tell you that I totally believe in them, but it definitely was an eye-catcher. The last story I'd like to discuss came to us from the Free Press Release Center. It is titled, Will Obama Be the First President to Tell the Truth About UFOs? It was posted on the 9th of October, And after decades of waiting for a president to brief the American public on the existence of UFOs, paranormal buffs are now wondering if President Obama will be the first to finally tell the truth about flying saucers and other matters. Unlike Presidents Carter, Reagan, and Clinton, President Obama appears to have very little interest in UFOs, says filmmaker R.J. Thomas, whose mockumentary, The Top Secret UFO Project, parodies UFO sightings and cover-ups. So apparently he's a skeptic who's a pretty nasty dude. But says he is more concerned about improving people's lives than he is about aliens. I found this story extremely interesting because, well, mostly because it was the last recent story that I found. But I remember when Obama first got into office that many people were extremely excited that this is going to be the year of disclosure and Obama's going to save us all and this and that. And I just don't have that same confidence in him for anything. And believe me, I voted for Barack Obama. I thought he got me. He suckered me in too. I mean, you know, it's a shame that guy doesn't go out and sell cars. Just go to a car lot because he could be a multi-millionaire just going out there. I would buy anything. I don't care if it runs or not. So, all right, folks, I just want to say it's been a great show. Good night. And our website is UFO_news247@yahoo.com. And please send any stories that you find along the way, and I will put them on the show as appropriate. So this is Jesse Hobbs saying good night, and keep looking up. Good night, folks.